The best way to listen to the best of the week is on the Relevant Radio app, free and always free. Download and share the #1 free Catholic app today in the App Store.
Today with me, I have Dr. Johan D'Souza, who's a certified psychologist with years of experience helping people, especially teens, overcome anxiety and OCD in the Houston area. He's a research affiliate at Harvard University in their Human Flourishing program, which has got a wonderful reputation, doing a lot of great work in their Human Flourishing program. Dr. D'Souza, great to have you with us.
Excited to be on your show and to talk with your audience.
Anxiety in marriage, what advice would you give to someone whose spouse tends to be highly anxious? How can they help the spouse, and what should they do to help, bring a little peace into the marriage?
Yeah, great question. So here's one way of looking at it. With the spouse that's anxious, there's two things that he or she is doing. So I'll just say she for the purpose of simplicity, also because women do tend to be more anxious. So there's going to be something that she's doing too much of and something that she's not doing enough of. So like an excess and a defect. What she's doing too much of is probably seeking reassurance. Basically, hey, just tell me that everything is going to be okay. Now, there's a danger here from the other spouse of providing that reassurance. Of course, I want to be kind to my spouse. I want to tell her everything's going to be okay. I want her to feel better. The problem is that turns into a dependence in which the anxious spouse becomes weaker and weaker and depends more and more on this just irrational reassurance from the outside and becomes more and more anxious without it. So helping the anxious spouse grow in confidence by not providing that constant blanket reassurance, instead showing confidence that, hey, I see this is tough for you. I know that you can work through it. I mean, it's delicate how you do this in the moment, but that's a general idea.
So I love that. It sounds a little bit like developing a kind of a codependency. Yes?
Yeah, it can be, because we want to feel needed. We want our spouse to show vulnerability and turn to us. Mm-hmm. This can often happen with a parent and a child. And so then the parent swoops in as the protector, but that just makes the child or spouse just more and more restricted and more unable to take care of themselves. Yeah,
right. So I want to be supportive. So, wow, this gets into the whole kind of attachment injuries and all that kind of stuff too. I mean, I want to be supportive, but I also want you to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and move forward without me, right? And so, I mean, the better our attachment bond, the more confidence I have to go out and do my own thing. Which is, right. That's the irony of the thing, right? Uh-huh. If I'm closely attached to you, I now have the confidence, because I know if I stumble and fall, I know where to come back, what's safe. And so I have the confidence to go out and try and explore my world. The spouse who's married to the anxious person, what's some of the vocabulary they should use? What are some of the messages that they should convey to their spouse?
So you're right that we want to show that secure attachment by making it clear that, hey, I am present with you. I'm with you through this. I'm supportive. I'm not derogatory or angry or impatient or frustrated, but I have confidence in you that you can do this. So that you can establish that without even saying a word, but then you show that confidence by not doing things for the spouse that she should be doing herself. Because remember I said that there's something that the anxious person is not doing enough of. Yeah. We can call that in general avoidance. There's going to be some form of avoiding what she's afraid of. And it's important for the other spouse not to fill in that gap and do the things that she should be doing herself, because she's going to become more and more dependent on that.
Yeah. So the anxious person is avoiding risk, avoiding a situation where I'm not comfortable. And so we want to help them to embrace those areas that are difficult and show confidence that you can handle this.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it does take an assessment of to what extent is the fear appropriate or balanced, because there are things that we should be afraid of. There are things that we do need help with. So, but we have to be able to identify when is it excessive. And then The tricky part then is also guiding the other person to see that it's excessive, because as Aristotle said, emotions are those things which, when change judgment. That when we're in the grip of emotion, our judgment is altered. So we may think we're being reasonable, but in fact, we're applying what's called emotional reasoning, basing our judgment on how we feel.
And I think that's especially true with the emotion of fear, right? Because fear is an intense emotion, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, right? Physiologically, everything gets jazzed up, and right, and now the cortisol levels are high, and I'm kind of in fight or flight, and I'm not thinking too clearly when there's fear. And especially if the fear is more anxiety-based and not based on a real threat, like a saber-toothed tiger, right? But it can really kind of just paralyze me in that whole fight or flight thing. And then I freeze and I don't know what to do. And then I worry about the fact that I'm worrying about everything. And then I worry about the fact that my spouse is going to get mad at me and leave me. And then I make my spouse even crazier because I'm always worried, and it just... the things just kind of spirals downhill. It gets to be.
And let me point out another danger here, that if we're using the classic like man-woman dynamic, where let's say the woman is seeking the reassurance, there can also be a danger, especially from the men, of basically just, hey, stop whining and get through it. Yeah, we call that being over demanding. Yeah. So and that's also not helpful. This is difficult for men to understand, but oftentimes what your wife wants to feel is just to feel understood.
Yeah.
So you may not actually have to say anything. You just have to demonstrate that you're listening. You understand how uncomfortable the thoughts are and how uncomfortable the feelings are that she's experiencing. Yeah. And that may be, in most cases, enough to help her get through it without you having to provide any reassurance or do something for her.
Yeah. That's the reason why I really like doing couples therapy, because you can treat people suffering from anxiety by themselves, but if you can get the spouse in the room and say, okay, spouse, here's what you need to do to be supportive, but still encouraging, but help your spouse not become dependent on you. Now I got an ally at home who could say, you know what, sweetheart, listen, we talked about this. You got this, and I'm going to step back and let you go do it, right? So now we're both working on the same goal to help the spouse overcome the anxiety. And I think, progress generally happens more quickly when the spouse is involved. This entire episode of Marriage Unhindered is on the updated Relevant Radio app. The Relevant Radio app is completely free and updated daily with fresh articles, podcasts, and prayers.